The U.S. military conducted 2 more strikes on boats in the Eastern Pacific. The attacks killed 6 people, bringing the death toll in the campaign to 75 now. In a post on X, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth cited intelligence and claimed the boats had been traveling in what he calls a known narco trafficking route. As in previous strikes, the identities of those who have been killed has not been revealed. Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefed a select group of lawmakers on Capitol Hill last week on the military campaign, and many walked away unsatisfied. My next guest is one of them. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington, who was at the briefing. He's the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. So why were you unsatisfied, sir?
Well, the intel is lacking in terms of exactly who they're striking and the groups that they're affiliated with. I mean, look, the broad idea that there are narco traffickers in Latin America and throughout the Western Hemisphere, which are contributing massively to a big drug problem in the U.S., absolutely true. The administration has identified 24 different groups, designated terrorist organizations, they call them. But who exactly these 24 groups are and how they are directly connected to that drug problem has not been provided to us. We don't know the intel on how we think these strikes are going to actually wind up limiting the drug problem. And then second, the legal justification for this is very absent. There are laws about using lethal force against people. Basically, they have to be violently, physically threatening you. So there's a lack of legal justification, and there's a lack of intel on how blowing up these boats in international waters are ultimately going to have a significant impact on the drug problem and on the narco-terrorism problem.
Yeah, so they keep talking about that. These drugs are coming into the country. Do you have any indication that they are coming into the country? I mean, have they produced evidence that the boats actually contain drugs?
They have not. Now, what they've said is, we've been tracking this for some time, and we have. Certainly, there are all manner of different law enforcement agencies and others who have tracked this. It's not, unbelievable that they would know some of these boats have drugs, but they've not provided us with that intel, and they certainly haven't provided us that crucial connection that you just mentioned. Most of what I've seen, and by and large public reporting, is that these are drugs that are more likely headed to Europe, and it certainly doesn't have anything to do with fentanyl. This is pretty much all cocaine that they're dealing with. It's cocaine and marijuana that comes out of that part of the country. So fentanyl is what's killing so many people. So those are the connections that they're not making. This is a very expensive operation. It's the use of lethal force of questionable legality. And I think it's an incredible expansion of the power of the President of the United States that deserves far more scrutiny.
So if they say they're trying to get fentanyl, but these boats don't contain that, they have marijuana and cocaine, if they have that at all, and they say they're trying to prevent this stuff from coming into America, but it appears that if they're going anywhere, they might be going toward Europe. What is the goal? Did the administration, can you figure out what they're actually trying to do here if what they're doing doesn't line up with what they're claiming to do?
Well, first of all, they did not specifically answer that question, and I asked it, actually, and they didn't have like a specific answer to it, except to insist that this doesn't have anything to do with regime change in Venezuela. Now, that runs counter to things that the President of the United States has actually said. But putting that aside for the moment, just what the basic goal is here has not been explained. What's the end point? What impact is this going to have on drugs in the U.S. or anything else? It seems to me it's just a show of force in the hopes that this will intimidate and weaken some of these groups, but that is not a clear plan for going forward. And again, this is very expensive, massive commitment of resources and of highly questionable legality. So I think we need far more specifics about what's the end game. How long is this going to go on? You gave the statistics earlier, the number of strikes, the number of people killed. How much longer are we going to do this, and what impact is it really going to have? Those details are absent, and to me, it all ties back into Trump's approach to the presidency, which is, I'm the president, I can do whatever I want, I don't have to justify it, and nobody can question me. That's a huge problem on 1,000 different issues, and what we are really fighting back against with the Trump administration right now.
There's also talk and reporting that the Trump administration is potentially preparing for boots on the ground in Venezuela. I mean, you've heard Donald Trump talk about regime change. What is the risk if that is something that is actually put into practice. If we do end up sending troops down to Venezuela, what is the risk that we're dealing with?
Well, even before we send troops in, there's the question of whether or not we will expand these strikes to hit the sovereign territory of another nation. Because right now we've been very careful to keep those strikes in international waters. If you hit the sovereign territory of another nation, that's a whole nother set of issues. Look, I mean, the risk is we get dragged into another forever war and a forever conflict with high costs and casualties with no particular positive outcome for the U.S. And remember, Donald Trump, part of what he ran on is, I'm going to bring peace. I'm going to end the forever wars. We're not going to be doing that anymore. Well, he hasn't ended those wars, and now he's starting another one. The risk is being dragged into a conflict that is very costly and also could expand and destabilize Latin America.
And since I have you, can I quickly get your reaction to the potential end of the shutdown?
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I think Democrats were fighting the absolute right fight. I don't intend to vote for this agreement. I do hope that those of us who are trying to stop Trump will recognize that the far larger issue is the cruelty that Donald Trump showed during the shutdown. Not only was he unwilling to address the health care crisis that is going to deny millions of Americans health insurance and drive up the costs for tens of millions more, but he was actively doing everything in his power to stop American people from getting food because he thought it would score political points. We are in a stronger position to push back against Trump now than we were on October 1st. I think we should have kept at it, but it was not as easy a call as some are saying. And I think we really need to emphasize that this has showed Trump and his administration, and also Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives, my God, shutting down the entire House, for what, 7 weeks now? Complete abdication of responsibility at the expense of the American people. I want to continue to prosecute that and make sure that Democrats don't spend too much time turning on each other. I don't agree with the decision, but I know where the fight is. The fight is to try to stop Trump's policies and offer a better future to the American people. That's what we need to continue to be focused on.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And coming up next, what a whistleblower says Ghislaine Maxwell wants from President Trump.